Right, we're live. Pack your bags for Biohacking Island. Vitalia City, also known as Longevity City, is an experimental community on an island in Honduras designed to push the boundaries of human health and longevity. Basically, it's an island for biohackers. But what's it all about? We're going to go inside Biohacking Island today on Biohacking News. This is Biohacking News. I'm Tony Wright, and before you go any further, please do like and subscribe. Biohacking uses natural, often forgotten secrets to optimize your energy, health, and performance. And when nature isn't available, we like to use a little bit of radical tech to help. And I've got a feeling there's quite a lot of radical tech on display at Vitalia. I have two amazing guests today. First up, Zora Benhamu, biohacking menopause educator. She's educated herself at the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine. She's been on this podcast before, and we love her. Zora, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. We're live. How exciting.
We're live. I know. Yeah. I just wanted to introduce a little bit more jeopardy to proceedings by making it live. And Zora, you were one of the ones who persuaded me to go to Portugal, and now you've left. So thanks for that.
Well, I'm a nomad, so I'm always there. I'm always back, and I love Portugal. It's one of my favorite countries. You made a great choice. I'm glad I convinced you.
Oh, we'll talk more about Portugal later on. Let's also introduce the founder of Nuchido, expert in the latest anti-aging breakthroughs, and the woman who's just got back from Vitalia City, Dr. Nicola Conlon. How you doing?
Hello, Tony. Hello, Zora. I'm good, thank you.
Oh my
Hey,
goodness.
Nicola.
Let's talk about this top story then. I'm so excited to hear about Biohacking Island, as I know it's not called, but I'm calling it. Vitalia is the longevity city. Is this biohacker's paradise? Zora, I want to come to you in a second because obviously you've basically traveled around the world for 30 years in the pursuit of health and happiness. But firstly, Nicola, tell us all about it, what it is and how you ended up there.
Yeah, it's an incredible place. I mean, when I got the invite, I was like, is this a real place? Like, this sounds too good to be true. But basically, it is on an island, Roatan, which is just off the coast of Honduras. And the idea behind it is that it's trying to bring all of the right people into a very small community so that they can all work together to advance longevity science. So this, we're talking about an island where we have longevity scientists and researchers, we have investors, we have entrepreneurs, all the right sort of people that can live and co-work together so that we can basically advance longevity science, medicine, putting everything in the mix all together to be able to accelerate how fast we can start new companies. And the reason it's on this island is that in Honduras, they have these special economic zones, which are basically areas where investors essentially can come in and buy an area of Honduras. In particular, this one is called Prospera, which is on Roatan. And you buy the area of land, and that means that you can then develop it in a way that you want to. So you have to abide by environmental, criminal, human rights laws, but that jurisdiction can then have its own governance in terms of medical laws, in terms of economics. And what this means is that when you go to this specific area, you can literally go and pay for your cup of coffee in Bitcoin. So they have crypto as their currency. You can legally use it. It's acceptable. And also when it comes to the medical governance, it is much more, well, there's a lot less red tape, shall we say. And the idea behind this is that clinics can open that can offer more radical experimental procedures, things like gene therapy, which usually would be completely illegal, or you'd have to go to some South American country illegally as medical tourism to have access to it. And the idea here is that if we can have more relaxed laws, but still have regulation that's sensible, then maybe trials can be set up where we can get good enough data to then be able to say, this is not unregulated. This has been very well thought through, And we have some preliminary data that could then possibly influence a trial in somewhere, I don't know, like the US, where currently it is not legal.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a halfway house between doing all of these therapies illegally or not at all. So it was so exciting. I got invited as a scientist who works in this space to go and live on the island. Unfortunately, as much as I'd love to live on a Caribbean island for a couple of months,
so they wanted you to actually live there.
They are, and yeah, anyone who is in this space, who has ideas, who wants to see the future of science and longevity science, can go and be a what would you call it? A tenant, a resident, or on the island. And the people that are there are literally living together. So some of them share houses. They get up in the morning. There's a whole activity program. You go to the beach at 6 a.m. for sunrise yoga and meditation. Go for your dip in the sea. It's not cold therapy because it's the Caribbean, but doing all these things together in the evenings, doing stuff together. So all of the right people that would only ever meet for like an hour or so at a conference or an event are like chucked together to live together for months. So I went as part of a specific week that they were running, where they were running like a conference and where they'd invited speakers. So I was speaking all about this idea of how we get longevity technologies into consumer hands now, because at Nuchido we're quite unique in that we're trying to take the science and get it out to the average consumer rather than looking at drug development, which many people in longevity space are focused on drug development. So yeah, I got to meet some incredible people, go to some of the clinics that are offering the gene therapies. In particular, the clinic which is now famous for where Brian Johnson, the biohacker, went and had his gene therapy. So yeah, very, very interesting place, and I really, really like what they're doing there.
Right, that's it. I'm coming. Zora, you in?
I'll meet you there.
We'll take the kids. Nicola, come on, you can persuade your poor girl's not going to want to go there, is she?
Actually, so I think there is even facility for like people to move there with families and, have childcare and education. And it started off as a pop-up city where it wasn't meant to be, it was like a temporary thing. But I think from the last I saw, it's now a permanent, it's permanent residency if you want. And it's a very beautiful place. There are certainly worse places to go and live.
Is it a bit weird? I mean, I know the guy who invented Ethereum, and sort of, I'm a crypto. Yeah. I'm not a crypto bro, but I like crypto. But it's invented, or it was created by the guy who created Ethereum. And is it all sort of Brian Johnson types wandering around, or is it all fairly down to earth? I imagine it's the latter.
Well, I'm not a typical Brian Johnson type, and I was wandering around there. So
yeah, good. Yeah.
But no, I mean, the people that are there are obviously a lot of people who are, very heavily invested in this space, dedicate their whole lives to trying to advance the science or founding companies. But it's a mix. I did think, oh my goodness, will I be frowned upon for not eating one meal a day at 11 a.m. and not going to bed at 8 and, whatever else Brian Johnson does? Like, is everyone going to be doing that? And, will I be forced into having some sort of gene implant or something? But it absolutely wasn't like that at all. There were what I would say would be fairly normal people, if you consider me as normal. And just a really, really great bunch of people who have a common goal. And, sometimes in this space, it can be a little bit lonely because, lots of people still are like, it's a bit weird what you do, and we don't believe in all this longevity. So being surrounded by people who are absolutely, this is their life, this is what they dedicate their life's work to, is quite inspiring.
What was the average age? Can I ask? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, obviously it was totally hard to tell because everyone was way younger biologically than, they could have been all like 80. No, actually quite young, which for me, I think is really, really interesting, because it's all the future scientists that are the people that are going to be driving this. I actually thought it was a lot younger than what I expected. But there was a lot the types of people that were there were very much either longevity scientists, investors, or people that were involved in the crypto space, because there's a lot of funding and investment coming through from crypto into longevity, which I think is really exciting too. So it was kind of a merge between those worlds. And, it's almost like a experimental city, the fact that you can live in this longevity world and you can also buy things with crypto and things that just are getting tested in the real world. Really, really exciting.
So Zora, you've lived all over the place. You have really been a nomad for 20, 30 years. You've been traveling around.
Yeah, well, I'm an expat most of my life, and
Yeah.
that's a little different. Nomadic is living out of a suitcase. But yeah, most of my life has been living in other countries. So yeah, I've been a little bit around the world, but I have not yet been there. I mean, the Honduras in general, I've never been. So that's definitely on my radar.
Yeah. And in terms of in general, sort of traveling and health hacking and biohacking, have you been anywhere in particular where it is easy? Have you found your own personal blue zone where it is particularly easy to biohack and live healthily?
Well, I find it's easier in warmer countries, definitely. It's something about the
Yeah.
sun, it gets people out. I find when it's dark, it gets cold, it gets dark earlier, and people have shorter days. You need a lot more effort to go out and do all these things. I mean, honestly, if you're going to ice bathe, let's do it in Thailand. Like
No, no.
you still can go into the, -4 degrees, but at least there's the sun outside. But in other countries like Finland, you jump into a sauna or something like that. There's always a way around it. And I have to, yeah. So for me, that first thing that pops out of my mind is having a good climate, because it brings people outdoors to do the things that really we should be all doing for better health and longevity.
And that's why Nicola lives in Newcastle.
I was just about to say, I'm not in the ideal part of the world, but it is beautiful. There's lots of beautiful countryside.
You
Nature
don't need
is
an
good.
ice bath.
Yeah, the North Sea is the ice bath.
But maybe where your family, your friends, and community are. And we know from the Harvard study of adult development that the thing that is most impactful for our health and longevity and happiness is strong connections.
Exactly.
So that's counts a lot, whether
It
it's
does.
cold or warm.
Yeah. And as we've already mentioned, I'm in Portugal, and Zora, you lived here in Portugal for a while, didn't you? And that was the absolute prerequisite for me. The weather is absolutely lovely, but if I didn't feel like I had a sense of community here where I could make some good friends and feel like I'd meet others and feel stimulated and part of something bigger and be able to contribute as well, it wasn't going to work. And that has happened. So that's been really nice. And I wonder, Nicola, we'll wrap up this sort of segment on Vitalia, but do you think biohackers? It was a bit tongue in cheek when I was saying pack your bags for Vitalia Island. But could people really go there on holiday, and could they find their tribe?
Yeah, I think to go and be a resident there. And to be quite honest with you, it kind of feels like a bit like a holiday resort. So where I stayed, it's like lots of little apartments, and it's on the beach, and
Lovely.
it just, it's a wonderful place. And one morning before the conference, like a group of us were like, should we swim out? There was a shipwreck. Should we swim out to the shipwreck and go snorkeling? And like, so we all got up at like 6 a.m. and off we went for a swim before the conference started. I mean, like, what other conference do you do that? And
Lovely.
It was a great sense of community. As you're saying, Zora, that was definitely had a presence there, and a feel of that common goal and that camaraderie of like, we're doing this for the greater good. And yeah, it was an inspiring place. I wish I could have definitely stayed there longer, but I'm really privileged that I got the opportunity to just go and experience it.
Lovely. Now, Nicola, I know you've got another podcast to go to in just a second, but Zora and I are going to chat about a few other stories in a second. One of the things we're going to chat about is AG1. So just before you go, we wanted to ask you about that because you are the founder of Nuchido, which is a supplement that we all love. And if you are a biohacker who likes podcasts, you will know all about AG1 because probably your favorite podcast is sponsored by it. And obviously, Huberman is one of the very high profile people who have his podcast sponsored by AG1. Full disclosure, they've approached me a couple of times. It never quite happened. I'm not quite sure why, but I'm possibly glad about that now because AG1 has been in the biohacking news over the last week or so. And that is because Brian Johnson, who we've already spoken about, the anti-aging obsessed billionaire, has properly got the beef with AG1. And well, I saw one comment which said, this is the Kendrick and Drake beef of the biohacking world. He's been saying that AG1 isn't worth it and there's too many ingredients that aren't effective. And I sort of thought he had a point, which is why I wanted to ask you about it, Nicola. He said 48 out of 70 ingredients have an unknown dose. They haven't done proper studies. And he's saying also that they've got so many ingredients that they're potentially not sort of working very well. Is it a bit weird that they're not disclosing their full ingredients?
So a lot of companies will do it. They'll put a proprietary blend on to protect from copycats. So it is a common thing that's done. I think the big issue with something like AG1 is, as you said, the amount of ingredients in there, because just from a bioavailability point of view, a lot of things, when you take them orally, you need a pretty big dose to ensure that they're, by the time they're being degraded in the stomach, they get through the gut, they've gone through metabolism, to have enough at the start to actually get to the cells where they're going to do the job. So what you find with a lot of supplement companies, in particular ones that have huge amounts of ingredients in one product, is something we refer to as fairy dusting in the industry, which is basically where they're just putting a sprinkle of everything that sounds cool in there to be like, it's got everything in. But when you look at it, you're like, well, yeah, it's like, I don't know, it would be like making a cake and putting a sprinkling of every different type of flavor in and trying to claim it was every flavor when really you couldn't taste anything. So yeah, that is something. I mean, personally, I don't take AG1. I think that it probably doesn't have enough of the ingredients in to have the effect. The other major issue to look out for with things like this is a lot of the claims are based on individual ingredients. So a company will be like, this product will help with X, but it's because they've put an ingredient in that has some research that says it does that. But often when you look at the research, it will be like, yes, 1,000 milligrams of this substance will help with X, but this company's put 1 milligram in. So really they can't make the claim. So any clinical study should absolutely be on the final finished product. I think that's another really important thing that I think Brian Johnson did highlight as well when he had his rant.
Right, yeah. No, it's been really interesting. It's been going on for a couple of weeks. I mean, in its defense, Huberman obviously promotes it and likes it. Many people seem to love it. Do you take AG1, Zora?
No, I don't. Similar stories to you is they approached me and I have to, before I accept any sponsors, I really look deeply into it. And I run it by Nicola. Dr. Nicola is my go-to when it comes to supplements. Her and Leslie Kenny from Oxford Healthspan. These are two women who I know have extreme integrity, and they are in the supplement business. We did a fabulous podcast with the two of them together, exposing exactly what she said and even more about the supplement industry to empower at least people to know what to look for before they're actually putting something in their mouth. And I agree, like to be effective is just like you said, you need probably a lot higher doses. But the other thing that she didn't mention today was the synergistic effects of supplements when they're combined together. They can combine and have amazing effects for you, or it can really go wrong. So that's, we don't know when people have proprietary information and they're not releasing everything. Does it have a synergistic effect? And again, what else are you taking too on top of all of that? And in this biohacking world, we're taking 20, 30, 40, 50 supplements a day, and we got to step back a little bit and think about how this is affecting each other. And again, I always revert to Dr. Nicola for a lot of this information. She just knows so much. I'm glad you had her on.
Yeah, me too. Glad I got both of you on. But you're right, because actually, and I think this is why this story has amused and intrigued so many of us, because a lot of us have got podcast sponsors and partners, and I've got one for this one. And you've really got to, what it is, it's all sponsored reads, isn't it? And if you actually don't use the product and you don't believe in the product, that there's something. Not only are you not going to sell it as well, but also it's quite unethical, isn't it, if you don't actually believe in the product? And I think that's quite interesting. I've got two people here who I really respect, and I respect myself as well, and none of us take AG1. So, what's going on there?
Yeah. And there's also money talks. I'm sorry, podcasters, we need to make money, and we need to pay the bills. We need to pay editors. We need to pay all this stuff. So I think some people will just choose to believe it, whether they really do or not. And that, again, is that, do you have integrity or not? And you gotta just choose wisely. And I really encourage people who do follow influencers, and including me, question it, be a little skeptical. People we interview, are they trying to sell something too? I mean, you got to make these decisions for yourself, but having more knowledge is more power for sure. And that's pretty much where I stand. And AG1 just hasn't yet made the cut for me.
Yeah. Nicola, we're going to say goodbye to you. You need to get a bottle of Nuchido to Brian Johnson.
Yes, to get his biological age down a little bit more. I agree.
Unless he starts tweeting about it, saying he doesn't like it, but
but at least we have all the scientific studies, clinically proven, peer reviewed, which he loves, to back it up. So maybe that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, that was the one thing that amazed me. AG1 apparently, according to Brian Johnson, allegedly haven't done, in his words, proper studies. Nothing measuring clinically relevant biomarkers. No medical doctors on their research team. That's what he said. So
okay, yeah.
So the opposite of you, really. But Nicola, we're going to say goodbye to you. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you in June at the Biohacking Islands. Not quite, but but at the Health Optimization Summit.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll see you both there. And thanks so much, and enjoy. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you very much. There you go. That is Nicola Conlon, and we will put all the links to Nuchido in the show notes. Now, Zora, I've got a story for you on menopause, which I've really been looking forward to talking to you about, because I know you've been focusing so much on menopause recently. And this is something that I think is really very relevant in the biohacking world. So this is an article in The Guardian this week. Menopause should be optional. And this article was about a doctor demystifying care for millions. And the article is really saying that, you can biohack menopause, and it doesn't have to be as sort of painful as so many people experience. What did you make of that article, and of the general theory that menopause can be optional?
Menopause is inevitable. It's gonna happen. No one I know yet gets away with it, but suffering is optional. This is the way I look at it, because I meet women who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They say, "Oh, I didn't have menopause." So I asked, do you still have your period? You're still cycling? And they say no. And I said, well, then you're in menopause. Sorry. That doesn't mean you got away with it. You just are. And there are a lot of things that are happening under the hood biologically to your body. Your bones are getting weaker, and your muscles are starting to go away. You have a lot of changes, insulin resistance. So many changes are happening within the body that we don't feel. If we, say we got away with it, they are happening, and no matter how much you biohack, and no matter how healthy you are going to go through menopause. And that's not a bad thing. It's just menopause needs rebranding. It's like a bad word. It's like old people or old women, and it just needs to change. and unfortunately, so we can biohack that transition so that we suffer less, we don't feel these effects, and also put ourselves in a healthier position. Of course, all that stuff's happening under the hood, but we can strengthen our bone density. We can build muscle as we age. We can do all of this stuff. It doesn't have to be. That's all optional. And aging, how you age is optional. There's a menu of choice. And so that's what we can do. And menopause, yeah, it will happen if you're lucky enough to get old. And it's just, you can hack the transition.
So what is a biohacker's menopause going to be called? What's the better name? We need a new word for it.
I haven't gotten there yet. If the word perimenopause is slightly better, because perimenopause is the years before you actually hit menopause, so it sounds younger. But I haven't yet come up with the good word. But you're giving me some homework now. I just don't want it to be a stigma. Like, I have no problem saying I'm 53 years old. I don't need to say I'm 53 years young. No, this is what 53 looks like. I'm sorry. That's the gerontologist in me is trying to combat ageist stereotypes. So we just own your age and say there's nothing wrong with saying you're so many years old. That's just me. And I also hate the term, 50 is the new 30, 50 is the new 30, and 60 is the new 40. Like, just be 60, sorry, and show that it's friggin' awesome. Like,
Yeah.
60 is looking really good to me these days. And from what I'm saying, what's appearing up on my social media looks really attractive.
Yeah, likewise. It's interesting, isn't it, that the biohacking longevity gerontology spaces collide so much. And are you finding now, obviously you first came on this, but you've been on this podcast a few times now, haven't you, Zora? But are you finding increasingly the people that approach you for help are focused on the menopause?
Now they are, for sure. I started in the biohacking space for women, but my audience over the last several years were asking for hormone information, menopause information. It was them who actually pushed me towards this sector. And I'm so glad I did. One, because I was like, well, I should probably learn about this for myself. But I've been biohacking my way through my health in general. So the menopause transition has been really good to me. But everything I've learned about biohacking and about gerontology is so applicable to menopause and this transition. And then there's the whole longevity piece after menopause that's I'm not only looking to improve women's health today and help them alleviate those symptoms and stop suffering, but I want them to benefit their future selves. I want them to protect their future selves. And we can do all of this. We just start now. Just do it.
That's really interesting, isn't it? So there is a real collision in the sort of techniques that you would use for longevity and the sort of techniques that you would use to deal with the menopause in a much less painful way.
Yeah, breath work is a perfect example. Breathing, learning how to breathe. And this is great for aging and longevity and our overall health. And I've done the breathwork instructor course with the Oxygen Advantage. That was fabulous. I'm so glad I did that. And now I can teach my menopausal community how to use the breath to lower their symptoms, to mitigate the hot flashes, or what to do when they wake up in the middle of the night with a night sweat. How can we use this breath in order to fall asleep again? How can we do it to lower the stress? And when we lower the stress, well, then we lower the chances of having another hot flash. I mean, that's just one example. And it doesn't have to be super science. I mean, breathwork's been around for millennia.
Yeah. I used to feel a few years ago when I started talking about biohacking on my podcast, it was a very male dominated space. Excuse me. And I felt like it was something that didn't really appeal to women as much as men. And now I look at the sort of the gender breakdowns that you get from Instagram or that I get from my podcast provider. And it's clear to me that I've got more women than men listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, reading my books, interested in optimization of their health. It is becoming a much more female dominated space than it used to be.
I think it's possible that women were always watching and learning, but maybe they weren't putting themselves out there, because we know through just the research that women have always been much more proactive about health and wellness than men. And it's sort of, this is the caregiving part of us, and we want to take care of the whole family's health. And so we've always been interested in it. It's just perhaps yeah, they maybe weren't putting themselves out there as much as men. And now we see, okay, there's a space for us too, because we now know the gender differences in the science when it comes to certain practices like keto or fasting. And then we have hormones and we have cycles, and now we got to just switch it up and change it differently. And then what we could, I just take it next level for, okay, now that we've lost our hormones, like how do we continue biohacking, and how can we change it so that it appeals to us and is more effective for the female body as she goes through menopause.
Mm. And while you're here, I always love following you on Instagram and your podcast as well. And I know you follow trends in this space very closely. And obviously, we've just been talking about one of them. And I wanted to ask you about looks-based biohacking as well today. And that is a trend that I've noticed on Instagram in particular, to equate how people look with how successful they are at being healthy. And I'm not sure if it isn't a little bit toxic. Now, I'm seeing a lot of comments on various biohackers posts which say something along the lines as, well, I look younger than you and I'm 10 years older, therefore you must be wrong and I must be right. And there's also this trend which is very tempting, which is to put one photo of you 5 years ago looking incredibly unhealthy and the other photo of you now, I don't know, in a bikini or with your swimmers on the beach, and you might touch it up a little bit on Instagram, put a nice filter on, and say, look how much better I am just because I look better. And I sort of think looks don't always tell the whole story, as we know. I sort of think it's quite a dangerous trend if we go down that road of judging everybody based on how they look.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there are, to a certain extent, I mean, you can see if somebody looks healthy or not look healthy, right? They look
Mm,
sick. But it taking it to the extreme where when I did my certification for sports nutrition, we learned how to prepare somebody for a bodybuilding contest or a bikini shoot. Oh my goodness. It was so unhealthy. And we had every chapter where there was claims like, please, please, please pull this person out after they took the photos or after they've done the contest, because this is clearly unhealthy and it's not sustainable. We shouldn't be doing that. So a reminder to people who are watching now, like when you see that bodybuilder or that Shape magazine, that's
yeah,
perfect body, it's ripped and everything, it's it's not necessarily healthy, right? We cannot sustain that in a healthy way. So, having good body composition is nothing wrong with that. And it's very important we keep out of obesity and we're not falling apart. But at the same time, we cannot judge people on their health and based on only their looks.
yeah,
And because we are ageist society, the whole world is a
yeah,
bit ageist. We have this negative thought patterns towards somebody who's older, who has wrinkles, who's got gray hair, who's walking with a hunch or shuffling. And it's something that I think if we don't change it now, if we don't start behaving differently towards these people, we are only discriminating against our future selves. By the time
yeah.
we get there, if we didn't train the
Yeah,
younger generation, it's going to be a problem.
yeah, yeah. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. I mean, really, I guess the point I'm making is it doesn't matter how much filler and Botox you have. If you look great, you're not feeling great. That's not actually the point of biohacking, and that's not going to make you feel happy.
Yeah, I mean, and no one will make you happy other than yourself, and finding that true happiness within. And you know how many people I've coached and said try to lose weight, and once they lose the weight, they're still not happy. You're like, well, then
Mm,
there's something else. Like
yeah,
it's not, because people have this mindset: when I lose weight, I will be happy. When I find my partner, I will be happy. And you gotta just be happy now,
yeah,
and that you're the creator of your own happiness, and that's I mean, that's one of the best biohacks, but you got to figure out how to do that yourself, because again, we're all bio individual. What makes me happy may not necessarily make you happy. So
yeah,
that's yeah, but you're right. It is to a certain, again, to reiterate that to a certain point, we can see if somebody's sick or healthy, and but I think unfortunately with social media and all these posts, and we all get sucked into it, right?
yeah,
And we just have to, I think consumers are starting to get smarter and smarter. I think we know, we start to question things. There's a filter used there, obviously, or this person's trying to sell something, obviously. And so it's got to be up to us, the consumers, to decide if they're going to fall for it or not. Is this going to make you happy or make you upset? People are triggered by all kinds of things. And again, it's not that person's fault. It's you allowing that trigger to happen. Again, that's, mindset and self-control, and all this stuff with NLP too, right?
Yeah, putting it into action is a different ball game, but yeah, I do. Now, Zora, on this new format, and by the way, it's so good I always love chatting to you, and I really hope you'll come on a semi-regular basis, because it's just always, you've got a good energy about you, which always leaves me feeling, full of Vitalia City afterwards. And one of the things we've been looking at is biohacking reviews. So that is, we've been doing short reviews of something that we've been trying out. It might be a technique, a diet, it might be a bit of tech, or a gadget, or a supplement, or a practice. Is there something that you've been using recently, or that you love, that you would like to review for our biohacking reviews section here?
Yes, and I can't stop talking about it. I have to say, I want to say something really profound and something that's free and all that, and the first thing that comes to my mind are the katsu bands, those blood flow restriction bands. And I wish they would be a sponsor for me. I'm so desperate to get them, because I absolutely love these bands. I learned about blood flow restriction, way back then, several years ago, but I got a hold of the bands March last year. So this has been over a year, and I have not been able to do impact exercises. I'm trying to reverse osteoarthritis. So doctors like, no impact. I'm like, well, how am I going to lose all my muscle mass? This is really bad. And it's been over a year, and I've not only not lost my muscle mass, but I've increased it. But I use those bands friggin' every day.
Wow. So what are they? I don't know about them. So what are they, and how do they work?
Gosh. Oh, I should have had them here. So they look like they just got a Velcro band around your arms or your legs. Some BFR bands have this sort of pump. It looks like the blood pressure pump, but I don't recommend those as much, because there are some contraindications. You got to talk to your doctor. You got to make sure, whoever's selling this to you, it's safe. But the katsu bands, it uses a cycle. So it inflates for 30 seconds and then deflates for, I think it's 5 or 10 seconds. And it's just this cycle that happens. So it's never really hard to do, because normal BFR bands is blood flow restriction. When you restrict it's partial restriction of the blood into the extremity, and that activates growth hormone. And so that's how people are able to maintain muscle and build muscle. And when I found out about it, I was like, this is great for my audience, because one, as we age, we may have surgeries, we may get injured more often, things happen, or menopause, and we struggle with building muscle as we losing our estrogen. So why not use this? And I'm so surprised more people in gerontology are not talking about that. And no one's talking about it except me in gerontology. And now in the menopause space, I think this is a fabulous thing to do. And it's honestly 10 minutes a day. You can do it while you're on the computer. You can do it while you're cooking. You can do it when you are training. And I just posted my story today because I was so amazed. I had these little baby weights, right? When I'm a nomad, I don't always have weights anywhere I go. But here where I'm staying now, there's a little baby weight, or I'll use a bottle of water. And I had the bands on, and my veins were just pumping. And when you lift things, you're like, wow, it's kind of heavy. and again, I can't do impact. I can't do some heavy lifting, which I know is super important for menopause and bone density and for muscle mass. And these have been a lifesaver for me. And the longer I go where I'm not losing muscle mass, the more I believe in it and the more I get excited about it. And then, of course, I shared it with the community, and women get back to me saying similar stories. So I just want them to be a sponsor because I just rave about it.
So the main benefit is that it helps you build or maintain muscle. Is that right?
Yes. And I measure it with the body composition scale, and I am amazed. And I've given, you got to get a hold of these, Tony. I
Yeah.
can't believe you don't have them. At first, I think the first person who talked about it was Ben Greenfield, like ages ago. And then Leslie Kenny was the one who told me about the katsu bands. And then I was just convinced. And it helps with collagen in the face. I mean, it just helps with bone density. It helps with, gosh, like everything. But again, you just have to measure it yourself and see what you think. But you'll see it from the first try. Your muscles just go kind of pop out. But
Wow, that sounds great.
and actually, if you Google, so when I was first investigating blood flow restriction, there's the two profiles that pop up on YouTube when you're researching this. These are the rehab people who don't want their, people to they're injured and they can't lose the muscle mass, they're athletes or something. And then you have the bodybuilders. And those guys are just strapping it on and trying to get muscle gains and everything. And it's those two communities. And I want a gerontology community to come in there too. But again, I'm the only one, but I think these are fabulous.
Wow, you could be the blood flow restriction woman. That's going to be your tagline. Next time you come on Biohacking News, it's not going to say hack my age.
Exactly. Now, just yesterday I was walking, and it was funny because I had them on as I was walking down the boardwalk, and and this guy comes up to me, this little Spanish man. He just literally see me coming towards him, probably looking at these strange contraptions on my legs. I have the tubes. They have some without the tubes now. They look a bit weird, but I don't care. Biohackers, like, we don't care. We just do what it takes. And he looks at me, stops me, and he goes, "You look very strong. You look very strong."
Wow.
I was like, okay, all right. If this doesn't do anything, at least I look like I'm strong. But they do. Or there's a lot of, actually, if you do PubMed research, you'll find a lot of research on blood flow restriction, and you'll find a lot of research just on the katsu bands themselves, because katsu is a brand. It's been around since the 60s, so it's nothing new.
That's my homework for tonight.
Yeah.
Love it. Zora, great to chat to you as usual. I will see you in June at the Health Optimization Summit, as I've been saying to loads of my guests recently. And before that, where can people find you, everything you do, Hack My Age, all your work around the menopause and biohacking as well?
Yes, you can find Biohacking Menopause on hackmyage.com. I've got communities, I've got memberships, I've got programs, I've got a menopause quiz. Find out where you are in your menopause journey. You just take a simple quiz and you find that out. Everything, all my social media is hackmyage.com. Sorry, hackmyage. And you'll find me easily.
Oh, you will. You will. Yeah. Zora, thank you so much for coming on, and see you soon.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye.
day.
Bye.
Bye.